Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Day One Zoom Salon with Susan Sparks. My name is Peter Wallace, and I'm the producer and host of Day One. You are in for a special hour of insight, inspiration, hope, and fun, which is exactly what we need in these very strange times. I hope you have on hand some cupcakes or other yummy snacks and fine beverages, adult or otherwise. And while we wait for everyone to zoom in, let me say that we're grateful that you're with us tonight. I know you'll enjoy spending time with Susan Sparks, one of our all-time favorite people. We also hope you will consider supporting the Day One ministry. Please be sure to check out our website at day1.org. This year, 2021, we celebrate 76 years of weekly broadcasts. That's right, 76. I haven't been here that long, but we started as the Protestant Hour in 1945, and since 2002 as Day One. Every week, Day One proclaims the good news of God's love on the radio, by podcast, and on our website at day1.org with outstanding preachers like Susan Sparks from the historic Protestant denominations, offering positive and inspiring messages for the real world. On our website, you can listen to our programs, sign up for our newsletter, read blog posts by church leaders, watch inspiring videos, and lots more. So visit day1.org, and while you're there, why not click on the donate link? Because if you donate $50 or more to Day One, we'll send you a free copy of Susan's new book, just out on Mother's Day, Love, a Tiara, and a Cupcake, 3 Steps to Finding Happy, as our thank you. Many of you have already donated for this event, and we are very grateful for your much needed gift. Well, now it's my delight to introduce my dear friend, the Reverend Susan Sparks, former lawyer turned comedian, best-selling author, Harley rider, and senior pastor of the historic Madison Avenue Baptist Church in New York City. For several years now, Susan has been one of our most popular preachers on Day One. We don't get her enough, but we'll keep working on that. And we're also honored to repost her inspiring articles on our website. In fact, there's a new one just today, so go check it out after this is all over. She's also a member of our Day One advisory board. Now, by the way, you probably don't know that Susan and I are twins, although she arrived many years after I was born, many years, but we do share the same birthday. So we do celebrate every year. Susan is America's only female comedian with a pulpit. A North Carolina native, she earned her bachelor's at the University of North Carolina, law degree from Wake Forest, Master of Divinity at Union Theological Seminary in New York City. Susan's work with humor, healing, and spirituality have been featured in O, the Oprah magazine, the New York Times, and on such networks as ABC, CNN, CBS, and even the History Channel. A featured TEDx speaker and professional comedian, Susan tours nationally with a stand-up rabbi and a Muslim comic in the Laugh in Peace tour. Susan is the author of 5 books. Her bestseller, and you must read it if you haven't, Laugh Your Way to Grace. It's so good, reclaiming the spiritual power of humor. Then she wrote a phenomenal book for preachers, Preaching Punchlines, the 10 Commandments of Comedy. This is great. If you're a preacher, or if you know a preacher or love a preacher, get them this book. It's wonderful. Last year, she came out with a wonderful Advent book, Miracle on 31st Street, which helps us keep the spirit of Christmas alive all year round. So good. In January, she released a wonderful devotional book, Grace-Filled Gratitude, a 40-day joy journal. I haven't bought that one, Susan, yet. And now coming out on Mother's Day, she's so prolific. Here's her new book, Love, a Tiara, and a Cupcake, 3 Steps to Finding Happy. And by the way, she also has a sermon included in our Day One book on 12 vital topics of life and faith, bread enough for all. You know, I had to get this in here, Susan.
Absolutely.
Most importantly, Susan and her husband Toby love to fly fish, ride their Harleys, eat good barbecue, and root for North Carolina Tar Heel basketball and the Green Bay Packers. Do visit her website, susansparks.com, where you can sign up for her newsletter and find all sorts of other goodies to boost your faith and make you smile. So Susan, welcome. We're so glad to have you tonight.
Thank you, Peter. It is my honor to be invited by Day One and to spend time with y'all tonight.
We're going to start our evening by having Susan offer a reading from her book, Love, a Tiara, and a Cupcake. And I encourage you to find the chat button on your Zoom screen if you haven't already. And feel free to type in a question for Susan about her book or anything else that you'd like to know within reason and propriety.
No, it's fine. It's all good.
Anything goes.
Yeah.
Susan, thanks so much for sharing with us. And I'll turn it over to you now for a reading from your new book.
Thank you, Peter. I've certainly got to start out with a huge thank you to my dear friend, Reverend Peter Wallace, and to Amy Davis, and to Ethel Ware Carter, all from Day One, who are helping us put this thing on tonight. I am so honored that my book is being featured and that we can use this to help support Day One. I've been working with them for, almost 15 years now, maybe a little more, preaching and writing. I've known and worked with Peter, traveled with him, workshopped with him, and we have become dear friends over the years. And I must say, Day One is one of the most important organizations, I think, out there right now that has a voice of inspiration and truth and justice in a world that desperately needs it. So please do check out their website. This is a very important organization for me, and I think that you'll find the same thing when you check out their website and look at their work. And if you feel so inclined, please donate to them. And I would love to know that everybody on this call is learning about Day One and becoming as excited about them as I am. We almost didn't get started this evening because, Ethel Ware Carter and I were sitting there swapping back and forth funny, inappropriate Jesus and religious things that we've created and or collected in our lives. And I just had shown them that I was putting on my earrings tonight, special religious earrings. On one ear, I don't know if you can see it. Let's see. There's Tammy Faye Baker, right, with her mascara running. And then, of course, matching Tammy Faye is Jesus. Right? So we're going to get started off on the right note. We got Tammy Faye and Jesus blessing our evening together. So I would love to read a little bit out of the book. Peter said read 10 or 15 minutes. I'd like to choose the first and the last chapter. I found as a comedian, it's always important what the material you leave people with. So I've got to put the last chapter in there. But the first one is one of my favorites. In fact, this first one, it's entitled The Weaponization of Pimento Cheese. It originated as a syndicated column and actually won an award when it got published. So I love this one. And it's a true story about a trip to North Carolina and Raleigh about 2 years ago. So let me share that now. There have been many times when the world tried to steal my joy. The worst example, the time TSA stole my pimento cheese. They could have taken my laptop, my wallet, or even my People magazine with photos from the royal wedding. I wouldn't have cared, but my pimento cheese, it's an unspeakable loss. I was heading home to New York City from a lovely visit with family in North Carolina. As always, I was bringing back a Southern treat to remind me of my roots and make me less lonely when I landed. On this trip, I packed a small container of my all-time favorite food, Palmetto pimento cheese. Now, that was written a while back. I know there's been some stuff about Palmetto, but we'll just call it pimento cheese. How about that? So for those of you who are thinking it's a sandwich spread, Susan, get over it. Let me clarify. You can't buy this stuff in New York City. Yeah, okay, sure. New Yorkers claim they have it, but the stuff they sell is, well, it's fake, really. It's an odd, tasteless Yankee version that I refuse to consume. The bottom line is that for me, a Southerner living in New York City, authentic pimento cheese is a priceless commodity. Now back to the theft. I entered the Raleigh TSA pre-check, placed my bag on the conveyor belt, and walked through the metal detector. When I got on the other side, I noticed the X-ray attendant squinting at the screen, her lips pursed. "I need a bag search," she yelled, plopping my sack into a separate bin. My mind raced through the litany of possible dangerous things in my bag. Tweezers? No. Loofah? Well, it's scratchy, so maybe. Hairbrush? Well, it has firm bristles, so you could probably bruise someone's scalp with it. Just as I was about to cough up the brush, I watched in horror as the TSA agent lifted out the plastic bag with my container of pimento cheese. "You can't take that on the plane," he said, heading to the trash. "It's a liquid, not allowed." I was like, "It's pimento cheese, and really good pimento cheese. Palmetto, you can't buy that stuff up north." I watched as my beloved was summarily tossed in the trash. Wonderful deliciousness wasted, struck down in its prime, and for what? Protection of the free world? An effort to curb the weaponization of pimento cheese? I walked over to the trash can and peered in like a mourner looking at a grave. All of a sudden, I flashed to the scripture from my last sermon. "For our present troubles are small and won't last very long. We fix our gaze on things that cannot be seen, for the things we see now will soon be gone, but the things we cannot see will last forever." 2 Corinthians 4. Momentarily comforted, I said a short prayer over the pimento cheese, then turned and walked away. On the flight back, I couldn't stop thinking about the loss of my beloved. It was so unfair, so unjust. I pulled out a newspaper out of my bag to get my mind off the tragedy, and the headlines quickly put my suffering in perspective. People all over the world were facing unfair, unjust losses. Some had just lost their savings, health, or job. Others had a dire loss of food or clean water. Still others had experienced loss of life, many through bombs or bullets. I put the paper down and stared out the window at the tiny dot of Philadelphia passing below. Maybe I needed to lighten up on the TSA. This certainly wasn't a life-threatening loss. In fact, their actions, crazy as they were meant to prevent loss. They were just doing their job as best they could. I was within a hair's breadth of forgiving when the horrible reality came rushing back in. I was doomed to eat tasteless Yankee pimento cheese until my next visit home. I nestled back down into my Delta aisle seat, stewing on my anger until a new, more sinister question popped into my mind. What were those TSA agents in Raleigh having for lunch? And that's the opening chapter in the section about cupcakes, finding our joy, or things that will steal our joy. And in the last piece, the last chapter is in the third section about love, finding our purpose. And it's called Wisdom from the K-Mart. When I want to lift myself out of the dumps, I go to the Astor Place K-Mart in the East Village of New York City. Sure, I mean, I could default to other solutions like walking around Central Park or watching a rerun of Chopped, or on a particularly bad day, breaking out the French onion, soup packet, sour cream, and Ruffles. Please, can I hear an amen? Those out there who love Ruffles and onion dip, okay. But my first choice is the K-Mart. Specifically, I favor an area in the far back corner of the K-Mart basement. It is devoid of windows or natural light and has a back wall of clear glass that faces the dark, dungeon-like tunnel of the number 6 subway train. There you will find the most unexpected of things, a plant nursery. Sprouting in this dreary prison are woven ficus trees, begonias, African violets, scheffeleras, Christmas cactus, and spindly spider plants. I feel so sorry for these little plants. They struggle to grow in their stale, lifeless chamber. And if the fake light isn't bad enough, every 5 minutes the train roars by, shaking them to the base of their wee little roots. That's why every once in a while, I head to the K-Mart to stage a prison break for a few of the lucky leafy inmates so that they might recover in my home or, given my garden abilities, die in peace. But at least they have a chance. And that's all we as human beings want too. Our environment is not so different than those plants in the basement of the K-Mart at Astor Place. We live surrounded by toxicity in places where we are often denied light, love, and sustenance, places where we can be shaken to our roots by unforeseen circumstances. Although we may give up in the face of such obstacles, those wee plants continue to fight, to use whatever they have to stay alive, to stretch their roots and strain their stems to convert even the tiniest bit of artificial light into energy and life. One of the reasons I love rescuing them is the tiny plastic tab that peeks out of each plant's pot. On it is an image of what that plant could grow into if it receives proper light and care, an image of its true potential. We all have that same divine potential, that metaphorical plastic tab with our best self embossed on it. And sometimes we need a reminder of what that looks like so that we don't lose our way, which is all too easy to do in this world. Our true potential has nothing to do with what anyone else's plant tab looks like. Consider the marigolds in the K-Mart. They don't try to grow into another kind of flower like a rose. They don't question whether they deserve love or whether they are valued or paid enough. Their only quest is to grow into the one unique image appearing on their little plastic tab to evolve into their divine potential. The next time you are feeling low, consider a little wisdom from the basement of the Astor Place K-Mart. Find a place in your community where you can rescue an imprisoned plant, or better yet, rescue another person who finds him or herself trapped in a toxic place with little light or love. Maybe you reach out to a friend in need, or maybe you volunteer at a homeless shelter or a nursing home, or maybe you write a letter to our troops or veterans or first responders through organizations like Operation Gratitude. Reaching out to others can do wonders to help them and you grow. The Benedictine nun Joan Chittister once said that we have the potential to be the human beat of the heart of God. Don't waste that gift. Don't give up the fight because you find yourself in an unhealthy, unsupported place. Each one of us has a divine potential. We just need to stretch our mind, body, and soul towards its light and do what we were born to do, which is love. Thank you so much. So you've heard the beginning and the ending of the book, but there's more in the middle.
Oh, thanks so much for that inspiration and much needed humor. I'm hankering for some pimento cheese right now. I don't know about anybody else. And in our comments, we've got amen on Ruffles and pimento cheese with a dollop of French onion dip. So remember, folks, we are open for your questions. So please feel free to comment or ask a question in the chat window. But I'll get the ball rolling, Susan. And I want to know how this book came about, why you decided to write it.
Well, thank you, Peter. That's a great question. And as most of you know who have watched Day One, Peter is a master interviewer. So you really, it's sort of like sitting in a big lazy boy. You just kind of sit back and He just takes care of you. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that.
I try to be Stump the Preacher, but it doesn't work. So,
Well, I love your question though about how it came about. This was actually a sermon last August entitled "Love, a Tiara, and a Cupcake," and then I published it as a column. And at that point in time, one of the papers that was publishing the columns that I wrote was the Daytona Beach Journal. And, I wrote it in the, this was sort of at the height of COVID. Like we were all locked down. We were all just in that place of shock and dismay and loneliness and depression. And in fact, in the book, in the introduction of the book, I talk about one of my favorite books, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, which some of you may have read. I love that book. And there's a quote in it that says this: sometimes just getting up and carrying on is brave and magnificent. And I was so inspired by that. And I thought I just need to write something that kind of, it's fun, it's funny in parts, it's uplifting, it taps into metaphors that make people smile, but brings some inspiration. So I wrote that piece and I wrote that sermon. Well, the next thing you know, I got a letter from a little book club down in Daytona Beach. And in fact, I talk about them in the acknowledgments. Sylvia Meineke and her group, and it's called the Women's Christian Book Club. And they were meeting outside on picnic tables in the park. And they sent me the most wonderful photograph of them sitting at a picnic table in a park in Daytona Beach with tiaras and cupcakes, reading that little column as their discussion piece for their book group. Had never met them, had no idea who they were, completely unsolicited. And I just thought, wow, there by the grace of God. Thank you, Lord, for that inspiration, because certainly nothing I would have, I think, come up with on my own if we all, just channel energy and spirit as it comes to us. But it dawned on me that maybe I had hit upon something that reaches people, that it not only makes people smile and gets them tactically involved, but also just spiritually involved. So I thought, there's the book. So I started putting together the chapters and I framed them around those three areas. Called Sylvia, immediately tracked her down on the white pages on Google, and said, you don't know me, but thank you, because you're going to be in a book. So that's how it came about. And I'm really excited about it because I love those three metaphors, but there's some of my favorite writing in that book from the past 3 or 4 years. And so I hope people enjoy it.
It is a treasure trove of inspiration and good stuff. So, Love, a Tiara, and a Cupcake. You have been through so much in your life over the years, losing your parents, surviving breast cancer, having to put up with me so often.
Right there, stop. That's it. That's the biggest one. Thank you for calling it out, Peter. It's easier to hear it and then you can mourn it.
But anyone who meets you sees you glow with this joy and love. So if you could, without giving too much away, say more about what those 3 steps represent for you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we all have our kind of toolbox to get through hard times. Everybody's got their stuff. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I've got more in my toolbox than just these 3 things. There may also be, a black box of wine and again, some onion dip too. That all of these are tools not to be used in, too heavily, but the ones I lean on the most heavily are these 3 things. And I found that in the hardest places that if I can hold on to a sense of joy, just find something to be thankful for, something to laugh about, something to smile about, which is the cupcake piece. And everybody loves cupcakes. You can't look at a cupcake and not smile. So I thought that was a good anchor for just remembering that we can smile. We can have joy in a place of pain. So having that anchor of, I still can smile in a place of pain. This experience is only what I am experiencing. It's not who I am, it's what I'm in the middle of right now. So to remember one's joy, and then also to remember one's worth. I think so many times, if I get in a bad place, it's because I've let the world put me there. The world can, the world can really try to steal your joy and put you down, can try to steal your self-confidence and your self-worth. You should be, why aren't you? Here's the bar for success, and do you match it? Crazy stuff that we listen to. I listen to, and you would think after all these years on the earth, you would learn a little more. I haven't. I still fall victim to it. And so I've got to hold on to my joy. I've got to hold on to my self-worth. And I love the idea of a tiara, because you got to have an attitude to wear a tiara, honey. You got to stand tall and be able to really kind of work it to put on a tiara. As you can tell, I'm a RuPaul fan. I love RuPaul's Drag Race. But you got to have an attitude to wear a tiara. So I love that anchor to remind ourselves that we are children of God in whom God is well pleased. End of story. Amen. So you got those two anchors. And when those two are really firing, then the third one kicks in naturally, which is we remember who we are. We remember our purpose, our calling, which is to love each other. I say in the introduction, I talk about how important it is in the world these days, how important it is for the human heart to love. And I give the example that science has estimated that the human heart beats approximately 2 billion times in one human lifetime. And the question is, how do you want to spend those 2 billion heartbeats? It's very easy to burn those, waste them on being angry and mad and resentful and beating yourself up and wasting the gift of life and time that we've been given. Or do you want to use every one of those precious rhythms for something that will lift you up and everyone around you, and use it to love? So that's the arc of the book. And I think we all preach, write, speak selfishly, because we can only speak of what helps us. And those are the three things in my life that I have to keep going back to all the time. That plus a little Cabernet and some onion dip. But those are the three things that I just keep going back to that have helped me. And I thought, well, perhaps maybe they might help others.
Great. Susan, we have a good question from the chat. Can you talk about your journey from law to stand-up to preaching? And what did your parents say?
Do we have to stop at 9 or 10 or what? Just kidding. My parents were old school. I have a weird family dynamic. I am the youngest. My brother and sister are twins, and they're 17 years older. So my parents were very Depression era folk. What my mom had me when she was 45 and my dad was 55, and this was in the 1960s. So this is a big deal, right? So as you can imagine, these were folks where very traditional family. Mom stayed at home to take care of the kids. Dad stayed in one job for 50 years, then retired and was done. So when I announced after 10 years, I was going to leave a job that paid more than my dad made in his entire life to go take a trip, to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and then perhaps go to seminary and become a stand-up comedian and a minister. I think they doubled up on their blood pressure medication. That's the only thing I know they could do, because this was not in their wheelhouse. But God bless them both. I remember, I told them on the phone. Thank goodness I didn't tell them in person. I told them on the phone, and I was up here and they were down there. And Dad, very silent. My mom in this very thick Southern accent. She's like, "Well, Susan, that's something." That's it. Like, that was it. And that was, in our family speak, just to say, "Well, that's something," was basically like saying "bless their hearts," which means it's not good. It's just a catch-all phrase that means, "Lord, have mercy. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life." Anyway, they came around, and unfortunately, they didn't, both of them passed before, they never saw me preach. I was not allowed to preach in the church I grew up in, Charlotte. Southern Baptist Church still to this day does not ordain women. And we weren't live broadcasting then. So they were both alive when I got ordained, but I had to run to the phone afterwards and just go, "It happened. I'm Reverend Sparks." So they knew that. But yeah, it's kind of sad, kind of bittersweet. But I guess to answer the question directly, I knew I wanted to be a preacher at a really early age, or at least thought I did. The very quick, 1 minute story, I I remember like at age 6 or 7, taking my stuffed animals and shoving them in the corner on Saturday night and preaching to them, like making up sermons based on the Sunday school lesson. And I love doing that because I was a little storyteller and kind of the class clown, even at 5 or 6. And I loved it. But that was quickly shut down when, my Sunday school teacher immediately told me, well, God doesn't call women to be preachers. So at 6, you're not going to argue. You think, oh, okay. And you change trajectory, which I bet people listening, we've all had that moment where the world says no and you go a different direction. And I just took the same skill set and ended up in the law. It's the same job, just different clients, really, if you think about it. And I was a trial lawyer for 10 years until that call just kept coming back. And in the meantime, I started kind of exploring that creativity. I was singing country music, I was doing stand-up, and then came an opportunity for me. And it's a much longer story than this, but just suffice it to say that the door flung open and I jumped on the opportunity. Took a trip, traveled around the world, learned a little bit more about other cultures and religions, came back, entered seminary, was doing stand-up in the clubs, ended up meeting Bob Alper and started the Laugh and Peace Tour, and then found Madison, and I have never left. This is my 21st year at Madison Avenue Baptist Church. So it's really just a kind of an incredible story. It's, your trajectory is never a straight line, but you just have to trust that, what is it Robert Frost said, the road less traveled. Well, mine was the road never traveled. Sometimes you got to build your road, and you just follow that light, follow the call, and there's something wonderful waiting for you at the end where what you do is what people need.
And you tell a lot of your story in your book, Laugh Your Way to Grace, right?
Yeah.
So anybody wants to get all the deets about all that incredible story, be sure and pick up that book. We got another question who Susan asked, not you, but another Susan asked, describe your husband, please. It must be supported, so I think it's interesting. He must be supportive, so I think it's interesting.
Oh, that's lovely. Toby is just like, he's just my soulmate forever. And I know that sounds like a cheesy Hallmark card, but it's the truth. Full transparency. This is my second marriage. Oh, Shakara. Oh, I don't know. Peter's going to hit. Oh, end of meeting. Sorry.
Leave.
Right. Oh, we have another guest coming on. I went through a divorce in Atlanta when I moved to New York. Toby and I met practicing law actually up here. And it was one of those rare, it was love at first sight. I remember meeting him. He was a lawyer at Citibank, and I was doing litigation. He was a much more senior lawyer doing litigation. We were supposed to have a lunch based on a large case that I was managing. And, walk in the Citibank dining room, and I was all nervous. I'd just started with the bank, and he had this, fabulous suit and all this stuff. And so he was sitting there, and all of a sudden he reached over to get salt, and I saw under his coat suspenders that had Harley Davidson written on it. And I was like, no. And I said, I'm sorry, you ride? And he was like, yes. Well, as you can imagine, the lunch just took off. And the next thing you know, we share like a million things in common, but we were just friends at that time. And it went from, friends to whatever that trajectory we go on. But we've been together, we've known each other for 30 years. We've been together almost 20. And he's just one of those, grounded, lovely people. He's Scandinavian Lutheran from the Midwest, born in New York City. Worked as a U.S. attorney, prosecutor for the Southern District of New York. Was a mafia prosecutor back in the day, and he's retired now, and he is becoming a fabulous chef and a wood carver. And he's just this grounded, balanced human being that really keeps me sane. As Peter well knows, I'm very high strung, fun, but high strung. And it's nice to have someone in your life that kind of keeps that even keel, Oh. We ride we both love motorcycles. We both love to fly fish. We both love the outdoors. We both love law and order. It's just those wonderful things we can share together. So I can't think of a person, the fact that we shared an apartment together for a year solid without going out of doors, basically, in COVID, and are in love more than we were when we went into it. Says everything.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to be cheesy. It's the truth. I'm just so lucky to have found him.
So were you a Harley rider before you met him?
Not technically.
Okay. So he helped bring that out.
Yes, I was a wannabe. The first marriage, I had announced that I wanted to be a Harley rider, and that was immediately the kibosh was put on that, which just contributed to, our differences of opinion. But I loved horses. I was like a little horse person growing up, and my family, we could not afford a horse. My dad would take me to ride like little ponies in the little circles, and stuff like that. And he did everything he could to get me out, but we couldn't afford a horse and we couldn't afford much. But one year I don't know where he got the money, but he splurged and he bought me a saddle. Oh. You just love that. He bought me a saddle. We didn't have a horse, but I got a saddle. And I love that thing. I would put, I'd put leather, I'd clean it, I'd brush it, I'd plate it, and I would put it on the back of his lazy boy chair and I would ride it and we would watch Westerns together. I mean, that, and then I'd put it on my banana seat on my bike and I'd ride around the neighborhood. Such a nerd, such a geek. But if that's not a sign of an early motorcycle rider, I'm not sure what is. That kind of morphed into, I really want to get a bike. And once I met Toby, all bets were off. And that was actually his first present to me it was a license, the class to get a license for a motorcycle.
You're also a big fan of boots.
Oh, yeah.
Are you wearing some tonight?
I am. Hold on. If I could put my foot up, I would, but I don't think I can. Hold on. Let me just pull them off.
You have quite the collection too, right?
I do, Peter. These, I'm still wearing these because these are my Easter boots. These are my favorites. These,
whoa,
pink for the resurrection, skulls for Good Friday, and flames on the toes for the Pentecost.
I love it.
I love these. Yeah, I've got. Let's just say I have a number of. I'm in the double digits, easy. With boots. And Toby's, he's a collector too now because of me. So yeah, I love them. I love them so much.
Okay, we have a question from Ken. If asked what is your favorite sermon you've ever preached, do you have an answer?
Oh, what a great question.
Is that a yes or no answer, or do we want to hear?
It's the answer's yes.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'm not going to give the sermon, but I can tell you about it. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right, sorry.
Go.
No. Okay. No. We just want to know yes or no.
Go.
Yes. I think my all-time favorite sermon is called the Tisdale Triangle. It is about a motorcycle trip Toby and I took out in the Dakotas. We had this horrible, terrifying storm, and we were going down this butte. These winds came out of nowhere. I think I preached this on day one back in the day. I'm pretty sure. And it just literally blew us into the other lane. Thank God nobody was over there. We lost traction. We were hydroplaning. We couldn't see where we were going. Ended up under an overpass. And what we ended up doing is just like going, okay, we could turn into the storm, which is going to be awful, or we could try to outrun it. That's not going to work. So we literally had to turn back into the storm and go overpass to overpass to overpass to try to get through it. And finally we did. And I wrote this sermon because that butte is near a little town called Tisdale. And we found out later that there's an area in South Dakota called the Tisdale Triangle, which is named that way because the storms are particularly ferocious. The winds come in like that. And I wrote a sermon around how to get through hard times based on the 3 steps we did. You've got to slow down and stop, give yourself a break. You've got to find shelter, and then you've got to turn back into the storm. And you just repeat that process over and over. Stop, take a breath, find shelter, get a little rest, turn back into the storm until the sun clears, the clouds clear. And I don't know, there's something about that sermon. Maybe it's because I remember the story so well, but I love it because it's just so simple, but it really resonates with me and I think with folks who have heard it.
So another question, obviously you've written some wonderful, wonderful books, but are there books or authors that you have found especially meaningful and helpful?
Well, I love an author called Peter Wallace.
Oh, come on.
There's a book called The Passionate Jesus. I'm not kidding.
Okay, leave meeting.
No, I'm not trying to be glib here. Peter is an incredible author, and one of his recent books, The Passionate Jesus, is one that we've used here at the church.
Oh.
And is just a beautiful, beautiful writing about Jesus and the love and welcoming that he offers in his ministry. But Peter, I read everything. I do, as a professional minister, I try to kind of keep up with the religious readings, but I actually really, I'll read for work, but I really love to sit over here more. I find for sermons and for inspiration, not church stuff that's not church related is stuff that really gets my mind going. I love, I just finished a book called Circe by Madeline Miller. It's just this really wonderful novel that was completely separated from church, and it's kind of about Greek mythology and Odysseus, and it is wonderful. I'm part of a book club called the Rebel Book Club that's based out of the UK. And it's so crazy. A friend of mine that lives in London told me about it, but during COVID, why not? They were all meeting on site, but then it went virtual. So people are now coming in from all over the world. It's nonfiction. It meets once a month. They pick these great books. We're reading one called The Future of Food right now The Fate of Food, that is about food production in global warming and, all of that stuff. It's just, I don't know. I find so much inspiration and creativity and food for thought in different types of books. And I will say I do like trash too. Love some trash. No offense to this author, I don't mean her book's trash, but it's this kind of light, trashy stuff. I'm reading one called French Women Don't Get Facelifts, How to Age with Style and Attitude. We got to just read a wide variety of things. So.
I love it. So you mentioned the column that you write that is carried by a number of Gannett papers, and we repost. And a lot of those are what make up this wonderful book. But how do you come up with your ideas for a column?
Well, honestly, Peter, it's very much, I find it in daily life. It's the same thing for the columns, for sermons, for any kind of writing. I bet you feel in your inspiration for your writing, it's about what is happening around you. Whether it's sitting on the subway or, a trip or a travel. I mean, that's one thing I've learned as a comedian is to be a very astute observer of daily life. I mean, here's an example. I was in Memphis a couple of years ago, and somebody had spray painted Trust Jesus and Elvis. And I just thought, that is so great. It's just great. And it was near Easter. And I thought, that's the most perfect Easter sermon ever. I couldn't have written anything better. And the gist of it was Elvis, Christians need to learn from Elvis fans because Elvis fans still believe the king lives. And so, it's just, I wouldn't have thought of that, but trust Jesus and Elvis, Jesus, Elvis, and then you start thinking about it. So that's where the inspiration comes from me. Maybe it's something I've read. Maybe it's something in the paper. I mean, a lot of times it may be a headline, an issue of social justice. It might be something going on in my congregation, a situation with someone or something that's happening, of course, keeping privacy issues, in the forefront, but it's daily life. It's what's happening to all of us.
So here's a question from the chat. So what is your writing routine? Are you a morning writer, late night writer, hand writer, computer writer, what?
That's a great question. I am a morning person big time. As the day goes on, I become progressively more useless. Oh. And I mean, right now.
I was going to say, you're not useless now.
No, I'm in pajamas. You just don't see them. I mean, COVID time, this is past my bedtime. That's why you see me sipping coffee. It's so ridiculous. But I'm a big morning person, and I will get up sometimes. I mean, like this morning I woke up, this is ridiculous, but I woke up about 3:30, Today is film day. I had to, the sermon, the service, 2 other video pieces were due. And so I kind of woke up, and you know how you do at 3:30 in the morning. I'm not sure I like the ending of the sermon. I just got up. I finished it at 5:45. I went back to bed and I slept till 7. It's just like, you just do what you got to do. And I don't know, in the afternoons, I start getting tired, and at night, forget about it. So I will get up and write solid. And one of the things I use is, I have an app on my computer that is called, oh my gosh, I can't even remember the name of it. It's like Safe, it's got a skull and crossbones on it. There's a million of them, but it basically will block all of like email, social media, all the sites that you go to and get, sucked into, and it blocks them for as long as you want. So I'll block it for 2 hours, and I have nowhere to go but that document. So I'll write with them. And the other thing that I love doing, some of my fellow columnists twice a week have a 2-hour block where there's a Zoom call, and it's a writing group, and no one says a word. People just turn on their Zoom and they just write. And there's something wonderful about feeling that community. Everybody's just working away, and nobody's doing anything but just writing, and you kind of channel that energy. So yeah, I find that I do well when I can block it out, when I get up early, and when I have other people around me that are doing the same thing.
Like being in a Starbucks with everybody with their laptops.
Yeah, absolutely.
Writing the great American novel. Here are a couple of comments. Susan said, okay, I think you need to write a book about your husband. He sounds so wonderful. Please share him.
No.
We won't go there.
Yeah.
And here's Shelby writes, I'm grateful for your sermon on feeding the 5,000 and suggesting that the people had food. I've preached that thought for years and been scoffed at, but I think that changing hearts is the miracle.
Nice. Well, I'm really glad that resonated.
Yeah. And here's a question from Charlene. Love you, Susan, but tell me, how does a Southern white woman lead a multicultural New York City congregation? Amen
on that one. That's a great question. And I don't really know the answer, to tell you the truth. I wish I had some formula to tell you, but when I took over Madison a million years ago, we were, 10, 15 in worship. We were a dying congregation. Our money was about shot. We didn't have an endowment. We had almost no people here. And the growth organically has been completely multicultural. We did not advertise it that way. We did not, we wanted it. It was, our brand as a church, our face is as one with the doors open that everyone's welcome, but it just organically happened. And the neighborhood is not necessarily multicultural either. In the last 10 years, it has become really expensive, crazy high-end investment bankers, international investors coming in. It's just, it's not the melting pot of New York City, the immediate neighborhood. Yet people came. So I can't really explain it. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, we had a great website, and we advertised the fact that we have a warm welcome at the door and everyone is family. And I literally would stand at the door every Sunday, and still do. Will do when we open up again, and welcome people, smile, say, I'm really glad you're here. Tell me your name. And I'd remember the name. People felt like that they were family coming in. And once that organic growth started in a small group, people would walk in and see someone that looked like them and think, oh, okay, this is safe. And they'd come in. And now, in a relatively small community of, on an average Sunday, 75, 80 folks, we have about 50% people of color. We have a very significant LGBTQ plus population. We have Latinx, we have Asian, we have Russian sitting by Ukraine. Frida is going to be 99. We have 1-month-old. It's just really wonderful.
Great.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's
like the kingdom of heaven.
It is the kingdom of heaven. And I guess what's really interesting to us at this point, and Peter, I'm sure you're seeing this with your preachers and with Day One as well, is where do we go from here? We've got now, our congregation's about 6 times bigger in the internet than it is in the pews. And now it's, of course, still 100%. We're not back yet. And what we've realized is that our whole church has moved into cyberspace. And even when we open the doors, it's going to be a real small percentage of who's on the ground. So we've gone from a church with a physical church with a digital imprint. We've gone to a digital church with a physical imprint. It's complete flip-flop. So it's a whole new era.
We've all become televangelists like Tammy Faye there.
That's right. And Jesus.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And your church is also well known, I see it on Facebook, for the thought-provoking and humorous sign that you post, this different messages you post outside the door.
Thank you for bringing that up, Peter. I love that about our church. And the funny thing is, people give me credit. I have nothing to do with it. Would love to think I do, but our church admin, Brian Croson, is the one that finds them, puts them up, and creates them. And people walk by. For those of you who aren't familiar, we are flat front to Madison Avenue. We do not have a steeple, so people don't necessarily catch the church as they walk by. So we put these signs on the marquee that are funny or different or make people think or catch their eye. And what has happened over the years is that people walk by, click with their camera, post it on Instagram, post it on Facebook, and they go viral, which is so hilarious. I mean, they're great signs. Some of them are just funny, like what happens in Vegas is forgiven here, or of course, my all-time favorite is honk if you love Jesus, text while driving if you want to meet him. Right, you love that. But then some of them really have some serious meat to them. I mean, this one is lighter, but I love it. It's lower your expectations and claim a victory. I just love that one. I hope I can remember this off the top of my head. One was the secret to life is to eat half, walk double, laugh triple, and love without measure.
Ooh,
I love that one. And then they can get kind of political sometimes, but I think in a responsible way. The all-time, most viral one that has gone like global, crazy global, was one that Brian put out about, a number of years ago, that said, rather than build a fence, America should build a giant mirror to reflect on what it's become. Bam. So yeah, that one, it's so funny because every once in a while I'll get somebody going, oh my gosh, did you see this sign? Isn't this great? Y'all should put it up. And I'm like, it's ours.
Nancy has a wonderful comment here. I so appreciate you and your books and sermons. You helped me get through COVID since I couldn't attend worship services. My husband and I have had 2 Easter services with Madison Avenue. Love your church and this new book.
Oh,
that says so much.
Thank you, Nancy. We're so glad that y'all are able to join us via live stream and YouTube. It's just such a blessing to know that folks appreciate that. It's funny, you'll write, you write these sermons or these blogs or these columns and you put them out there and you think, is anybody reading this? You don't even know. Especially I'm sitting in my sanctuary right now. It's completely empty, obviously. The big camera is there. I come in here, I film the sermon in an empty sanctuary, and I think, is anybody gonna watch this? I don't even know. And it's so lovely to hear every once in a while beautiful words like that, to know that it means something to people, that in fact, that little SIM card that goes in your computer that sends it into the ether, puts it out somewhere that people actually are able to see it.
You are a geek. That was very techy there.
Yeah, thank you. SIM card. I dropped that. I thought impressive. I'm impressed. Yeah.
I want to ask you, some folks on this Zoom webinar may know we had originally planned to have a Day One benefit Laugh in Peace comedy show you mentioned earlier with Rabbi Bob and Gibran Salim. And of course, we scheduled it the week of the lockdown in 2020, March 2020. We're looking to reschedule that in February 2022 here in Atlanta. I'm sure you miss doing these stand-up shows, but tell us why you do those Laugh in Peace comedy shows and what are some of the responses you've got?
Yeah, I do miss it, Peter. I miss Bob and Gibran because they're good friends of mine. And mean, like, I miss my friends and family in general. We did do one virtual show in January for a group out of Chicago, interfaith group, and it was, Lord knows, it was like 400 people on a Zoom call. Can I even begin to tell you the pain of trying to do stand-up on Zoom? I mean, you hit your punchline and everyone's muted, and you're like, it's like, I finally just put like a laugh track on my phone, it's just like would hit it to make myself feel better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I miss them so much. Bob started this tour right after 9/11. He'd been a professional, he'd been a rabbi for like 20 years and then pulled out and became a professional comedian full time. And he was, doing his own kind of tour and gig, and then 9/11 hit. And he got the idea of bringing together a Muslim comic himself and a Christian. He loves to say that the hardest comedian to find was the Christian, which, okay, fair enough. But we started touring together, and we've been doing this almost 20 years. I adore them. Bob and I have been together the whole time. We've gone through about 4 major Muslim comics, because they'll be with us for a while and then they'll break big, and that they'll go on and we're like, wait, Ahmed was our first comic, and he broke big and now is all over Hollywood and doing movies. And Mo Amer, you may know that name, was with us for a while. Mo now has his own like Netflix special and was on Colbert and broke big. And now we're with Gibran Salim, who is an up and coming young Muslim comic who is so talented. And it's just a matter of time. I keep saying, don't leave us. But he, if we are fortunate enough to be able to come back to Atlanta, I'm hopeful that Gibran will be with us. But the show is just, it's lovely. It is, we're not preaching about our religion. Yeah. We don't even really talk about religion. It's the 3 of us talking about our life experiences and what we as people have in common. Mm-hmm. And the whole point of the show is we have way more in common than you would think, than we can imagine. And I talk about it in my own personal life, and Gibran talks about it, Bob talks about it, and I'll give you one example. Bob sometimes ends the show with this, and I don't think this will be a spoiler. He may or may not use this in Atlanta, but okay, one joke, you'll know. He sometimes ends the show and he says, as a rabbi, I just want to leave you with the idea that we all have so much in common, more than we could ever imagine. And let me just share this story as a rabbi to share with you what we might share as religions. And he tells the story of 2 rabbis. One says to the other, my son just converted to Christianity. What do I do? And the second one said, really? My son too. What are we going to do? And they talked for a minute. And they said, let's go talk to God. So the 2 rabbis go to God and they're like, both of our sons converted to Christianity. What are we going to do? And God said, really? My son too. And, as a rabbi offering that, just as one example of what, our religions might share, it's just such a great example. And it's through laughter. It's when you laugh with somebody, whether it's a friend or stranger or even an enemy, your worlds overlap for a split second. And there's something in common because you've shared the premise of the joke. And as Bob always says, you can't hate somebody that you laugh with. You just can't. It's not possible. So I love that show. I think it's one of the things I'm most proud of in the humor work, because Lord knows I think humor and joy may be the things that save us in the end.
Amen. Amen. One little quick question from Phyllis. Will you do an audio book for this book? I'd love to hear all your book in your voice.
Oh, you know what? I probably will, Phyllis. I did one for Miracle on 31st Street, the Advent and all year long Christmas book, which it was really fun. It's hard, I must say. It's much harder than I expected, but I think I will. It is. I've had people say that before, that it's one thing to read it, but it's another to hear your accent, your inflection, your choice of how to, your pauses, and just my version of it. So thanks for giving me that inspiration. I'll do it.
And you can add a laugh track.
Exactly. Wait a minute, I'm gonna show y'all.
Yeah, we're about to finish, but I want you to show us some of your tchotchkes there.
Oh, I was gonna do the laugh track, but okay.
Okay, do the laugh track.
I don't know. Let's just do, well, I've got a whole, this is, I'm sorry, Ethel's gonna Ethelware's going to have much better stuff, but this is my Last Supper lunchbox.
I love the halo on it from your light there.
Yeah, it's nice. That's good. Some of you may have met Pink Jesus. I don't know if you know pink plastic Jesus. It's a great statue of Jesus, but he has an 8-ball in his feet that will tell your fortune. So, like, for example, if I wanted to ask him something like, Pink Jesus, do you think Day One will probably most likely save the world?
Oh.
Amen. That is the answer that just came from his feet. So,
Amen.
This is important. It sits on my desk along with my wooden sign that says "Not today, Satan," because I think that's important too. So you got to have things to make you laugh.
That's right. Well, tell you what, this time has just flown by. Susan, thanks so much for sharing with us with the grace and humor and inspiration that we do so desperately need these days. Don't forget, folks, if you haven't already, go to day1.org and click on the donate link. And if you give $50 or more with our thanks, you will get a free copy of Susan's brand new book coming out on Mother's Day. So we'll be sending these to you very soon. Those of you who have signed up and paid, we're so grateful for your support. We've heard from so many people over the last year about how Day One has really ministered to them as a church for them in this time when they can't go to church. So if you've already donated, you're good to go, and thank you very much. So thanks again to our dear friend Susan Sparks, to you for joining us. Good night, stay well, and God bless you. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you so much. My honor, Peter. Thank you, everyone, for coming.